Most of what y'all think about the military is straight up bullshit. Hollywood fiction. If you still believe that the military is like non-stop combat or a drill sergeant yelling in your face constantly like Full Metal Jacket, and you probably been brainwashed by Hollywood. I won't even act like I wasn't prior to joining the military. I literally went into the recruiter's office 20 years ago. I thought I had a 50-50 chance of dying. Like, I joined thinking that. I was down bad, y'all. But after being in the Air Force for 19 years, turns out that most of what I thought about the military before I joined was all lies. And today, we're gonna expose the truth. So myth number 1, I was in Iowa recruiting and I went to a Subway inside of the mall to get myself a sandwich. As I'm standing in line, this little boy, probably like 7, 8 years old, he comes up to me and he was like, "Sir, I want to buy your meal." And I'm like, "Nah, that's okay, little man. Like, I got it. Thank you though. Like, you don't have to do that." He goes back over to his parents and I can see his parents like, "Nah, you need to go back over there." So the little boy comes back up and this dude said, "Yo, my parents said that we must buy your meal because you need it more than we do." At that time, I was probably making like $85,000 a year. So this whole thinking that military members are poor, we gotta stop. You know, the reality is most Americans don't start making $50,000 a year until about age 28. Do y'all know that an E4 in the Air Force is making about $50,000 a year when you include their base pay, their housing allowance, and their food allowance? I know where this came from because I lived it. My dad was prior Army and I grew up in a military home and we did not have money. So back in the day, if you said that the military didn't really pay well, that was true. But every year the military gets a cost of living allowance. So every year as the cost of living goes up, the military gets a pay raise. So over time, all these pay raises that they keep getting, now the pay is pretty good. It's on par with like some really good job. Meanwhile, you got some college grads out here still eating ramen. Y'all, the military is not charity work. It can be a financial strategy if you use it right. Myth number 2, you must be a citizen to serve. When I was in Iowa, I had tons of people from Togo, Africa come into my office. They did not have a US citizenship. Just like you, I did not know prior to becoming a recruiter that people without a US citizenship could join the military. Since 9/11, there has been 148,000 non-US citizens obtained citizenship by joining the military. Not only was I able to get some of these Togolese people into the Air Force, but they obtained US citizenship shortly after joining, and they were able to get their family members over here from Africa. But not everyone who's a non-US citizen can join, and I think that's where the myth comes from. Because if you join, you're gonna need a green card, otherwise called an I-551, and you cannot join with like a work visa, like a student visa. And just recently, the military used to say that you had to have a 10-year green card in order to join, but they changed it to a 2-year green card, or at least in the Air Force. So if that's you, stop believing the myths, go see a recruiter, because the military isn't about where you're from, but where you're going. The number 3 myth, I'm 6 foot tall, y'all. I went into the Air Force as 139 pounds. I need y'all to think about that. Right now, I'm about 195 pounds. Some people say I'm still skinny. Maybe not this person on YouTube called me a fat bitch back in 2021, but beyond him, most people say that I'm pretty skinny. So at 139 pounds, you gotta imagine how skinny I was. Just like you, before I joined, I thought that I had to be like some super stud. I thought that I had to be Captain America. But I got the basic training and I realized I didn't. Matter of fact, I got in really good shape. And this is back when Air Force basic training was 6.5 weeks. I ended up leaving basic training 154 pounds. So they got me in shape, not only got me in shape, but they also helped me gain a little bit of weight. So the reality is 80% of military jobs don't even see combat. So not everyone has to look like some badass person or be some badass person. So yeah, you may see some people who look like an action figure out of a movie, but you also got some people who can't find a gym in the military without a GPS. So realistically, all you need to join is some effort and some discipline. You can get the abs later. The number 4 myth, I graduated basic training in 2006. It was super by the minute. Somebody told me everything to do. Get to tech school, things start to loosen up a little bit, right? And then I got to my duty station in 2007, and that's when everything changed. I thought prior to joining, and even when I went to basic training, I thought it was going to be like that the entire time. I thought constantly somebody was going to tell me to do something every minute of the day, kind of track everything that I'm doing and make sure that I'm getting the task done. I get to my duty station and I'm going to work for 8.5 hours, and then I'm going home. And going home, I didn't know what to do because I had so much time. I was like, oh shoot, y'all gonna let me go to the beach? Y'all gonna let me drive to Georgia? I even met my wife in Florida. And at the time I was living in the dormitories, and I used to have her come stay the night with me in the dormitory. So yes, there's structure, but you're not living this hardcore, rigid life every minute of the day. Now, I can only speak for the Air Force. I don't know how the Army, I don't know how the Marines is treating you, Navy, but I know in the Air Force, like, yes, there's structure, but you're not having some super rigid day. Of course, there's discipline. Of course, you got to listen to your higher ups and make sure you're doing everything that they're telling you and doing your job, but it's just structure. It's not a prison center. My number 5 myth. I told y'all when I joined, I thought like I had a 50-50 chance of dying. And I watched all these military movies, and it just looked like somebody was gonna die. When I made the choice to go see my recruiter, I had it in mind like, hey, you know, you might not come back. But like I said earlier, 80% of jobs involve combat, but only about 10% of people actually see combat in the military. I think the closest I got to combat in the military, I was deployed in Iraq back in 2009, I believe it was. I'm sitting on top of a plane. I was an electrician back then, right? So I'm fixing some lights on the wing of a plane, and I hear something go tink, tink, tink. We was like, what was that? So we finished fixing these lights. After we finished, we went to go look for that sound. It's a mortar. It's a mortar that somebody shot over our base. It hit one of our planes. It didn't explode, and it just tink, tink, tink down to a corner of where we had our aircrafts parked. So I see this mortar, and I'm like, oh shoot, there's people really trying to kill me. But that's about the closest I came to combat, like an incident. Most people in the military are doing some type of supportive role. So if you think about it, every military branch has a main mission. In the Air Force, their main mission is to provide air power. There's only a few people who are actually in these aircrafts providing that air power. Everybody else is supporting them. Me, I was a maintainer at that time. I was fixing the planes to support them. You got people who are in logistics. They're getting parts. They're getting supplies to these people who are in the aircrafts. You got people who work services. They're feeding the people who are working in the aircrafts and everybody else on base. So every job has a role, and not every role needs to be a combative one. Number 6 myth. This one hits home a little bit because you hear a lot of people say only lowlives join the military. The reason why I say this one hits home a little bit is because maybe by definition, before I joined the military, you could have considered me a lowlife. But that does not mean that all the people who join the military are. When I was a recruiter, I put in valedictorians. I put in people with 4-year college degrees. I put in people with 6-year college degrees. I put in doctors into the enlisted roles of being in the military. That's just the enlisted part. They also have the commission part where the officers are, and every one of the officers are required to have a degree in order to join. These are people who put time and invested time into their lives and into their career. They're not lowlives. And this falls into my next myth that the military is a last resort. Did y'all know that 77% of the American population is disqualified from joining the military? So when you say that the military is a last resort, when only 23% of the population can qualify, you're spreading wrong information. The military has some jobs with lower acceptance rates than Ivy League schools. When you look at the Air Force, they're special warfare operators. You're looking at single-digit percentages for people who actually make it through and are accepted into that job. So I actually hate this myth probably the most because what happens is there's a lot of people out here that have that in the back of their head, right? They're like, you know, no matter how bad my life gets, I can always join the military. So what the military recruiters see is a lot of people who have hit rock bottom thinking that now that I've hit rock bottom, I can get my life right by joining the military. But it don't work that way. They can't work magic. There's a lot of things that you need to have in order and able to join. You got to have your credit right. You can't have a criminal history. You can't have weight issues. You can't be on drugs. You can't have too many babies running around. This is one of the most selective careers that you can join. So don't wait until it's your last resort. We got to get out of that mindset. We got to start looking at the military as a first resort. My number 8 myth. I bet when you're out and about and you're trying to buy something and somebody's like, this is military grade, you think, oh, that must be good. I'm gonna be real with you, y'all. Stop thinking that the military has the leading edge technology or cutting edge technology. I remember when I joined back in 2006, I thought I was gonna see like some next world type stuff when I started working on the aircraft I was working on. I got to work on the AC-130U. If y'all not familiar with this aircraft, back in 2006, this aircraft used to have 3 guns on it. It had a 25, it had a 40, and it had a 105 mil cannon on the side. This aircraft was built in 1950, y'all, and everything inside of it looked like it was built in 1950. Now, this aircraft was highly effective, don't get that twisted, but it's operating off of equipment that was built in the 50s. And you still got some aircrafts out here from the 50s that's still handling business with that old technology. So yes, we have incredible tech. We got hypersonic missiles, we got stealth aircrafts, we got all kind of cool stuff. But we also have some stuff that was built before Instagram was developed. So no, you're not gonna be flying around in the Iron Man suit. So stop thinking that the military has all this stuff. At least at the clearance that I have, I ain't seen it. A number 9 myth, and I believed this one hard before I joined. I thought that the military would strip you of who you are and turn you into like this soulless robot. You just kind of like brainwash and you do whatever somebody tells you. That was honestly one of my biggest fears of joining the military, is that they were gonna strip me of who I am and turn me into, I don't know, like I was scared that I was like, what am I gonna become? But after 19 years, like I go back home, I see my cousins, I see my family, and everybody says I'm pretty much still the same. They say I talk different, but they say I'm pretty much still the same. So after 19 years, yes, I have grown. They have shaped me into like a leader. They have shaped me into a more responsible person, but I'm still me at the end of the day. And from what I've seen in the Air Force, that they don't just want blind obedience. They actually want you to start thinking. They give you a lot of room. They give you a lot of space for you to think and make decisions. They don't need to hold your hand every minute of the day. Matter of fact, if your supervisor is holding your hand every minute of the day, you got an upset supervisor. I'm telling you that right now. And the last myth I want to tackle, number 10. I'm getting close to getting out of the military. I got like 1 more year, or maybe less than 1 more year by the time this video comes out. I feel very confident that I'm gonna go into the civilian world and be successful. I have gotten a lot of tools. I have gotten a lot of knowledge, a lot of growth, a lot of development from being in the Air Force, to where I feel like I'm gonna be highly successful in my civilian job. I don't feel like I'm underprepared. I don't feel like I don't have what it takes to be successful. So this whole narrative, or this whole myth that veterans are not able to function in the civilian world, or we become chopped goods in the civilian world, we got to kill that one too. I personally feel like the military has developed me strongly enough to where I'm not gonna end up like that. And I've seen most of my peers, or I would say all of my peers who have already gotten out, have transitioned into something successful as well. So when we got people saying that veterans are so mentally messed up to where they can't function, that one is actually harmful. So be careful going around spitting out statistics like that when you don't really have an idea of what it's actually like. Now, if you believed in any of these myths, don't worry, I did too, but I want to hear it in the comments. And also, there's a reality right now that a lot of people in America are struggling right now. I got a video on the screen right now that will change your mind about how you look at the military compared to the rest of America. But like I always say, I hope this video brought value to you. Stay beautiful, stay classy, and until next time, check me out.